Good morning, everyone. My name is Daphne Dedry, and I will be your moderator for this session. I'm here to support both you and the presenter. So if you have any questions or need help with the Zoom interface, you can use the chat room, the chat icon, and locate my name at the bottom is Daphne Dedry and send me a direct message, and I will do my best to help resolve your concerns. The title of this session is Engagement Strategies for a Changed Classroom, and we have Sue Thotz and Tori Waddington. I'm going to turn this over to them. My icon is going to be this, so that way you'll know you have me. All right, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Daphne. I'm going to share my screen and share a couple of the slides that you tell me what it is that I need to talk about with these slides. I'm assuming that all we're going to do with these slides is just kind of say, welcome everyone to the Riverside County Google Camp, our annual conference. And this is the first day. And the other piece that we wanted to share and make sure that you all knew about was if you are on Instagram or Twitter, please use the hashtag #IEGoogleCamp for any of the sessions, any of the learnings, any of the questions, anything that you're connecting with. Please share all that good stuff on Instagram and on Twitter. And if you need any help, oh, do I have to share all this? Oh yeah, there's lots of stuff. Daphne, do I need to share all this help desk stuff?
No, you don't. This is just for information, but yes.
Okay. Oh yeah, this introduces us. And oh, please share feedback. Oh, I do have to share this. Please share feedback after the session and let us know what you thought. If you have any ideas, any feedback, anything that you want to share with us, that would be wonderful. And don't forget to join us today at lunchtime for the Lunchtime Equity Series with Dr. Brown and Dr. Sullivan. They are going to be fabulous, I know. And yeah, welcome. I guess I did the advertising part that I was supposed to do. All right, does that all sound good to you, Tori?
Yes.
Daphne, all right, so let's kick it off. Here we go. I'm going to get into my slides and I am going to present so that it looks real. And here we go. So welcome everyone. I'm so excited to be here. I'm so happy to be here. And I'm so glad that we have such a big room of Zoom people. This is really fun. So if I'm gonna share a little bit about engagement strategies for a changed classroom, and Tori's here to join me, and we're gonna introduce ourselves. My name is Sue Thotz, and I'm the Senior Program Manager for Common Sense Education. That is my Twitter handle there, and my email address. And what I do is I work with a nonprofit organization, and we provide resources for free for educators and for parents, all related to media and technology. I am joined today by my friend Tori. And Tori, I'm going to let you tell a little bit about yourself and who you are, and then we'll get started.
All right, thank you, Sue. My name is Tori Waddington. I am a special education teacher for the Marietta Valley School District. I work at the elementary school. I specialize in working with kids who have emotional trauma or behavioral disorders. I've been doing that for about 5 years now, as well as off and on typical special education classes like SDC or RSP. I'm really into technology as well, and using technology to help students who have cognitive disabilities or behavioral disorders, and also using it to kind of bridge the gap with equity in education. So I'm very excited to be here and talk to you guys.
Excellent. So what I kind of pitched to Tori was that I do a lot of the theoretical part, and I do a lot of the providing resources and lists and reviews and ideas around technology, but he's the one who actually is a real teacher at this point. I'm a former real teacher, but he's the one who's currently working with kids, and so he's going to provide all of that great insight that we need today. As we're moving forward here, please feel free to introduce yourselves and share who you are and where you're coming from, and say hi to each other. If this is an active chat, by all means, I'd be thrilled. And just get to learn a little bit more, and feel free to participate and put any ideas that you have in this chat as well. Okay, so so let's see. Today, the focus of our session is really on engagement practices and acknowledging the fact that obviously it's a different world that we're coming back to this fall for many reasons. And so the questions that we have here today are about how are we engaging students who are not in our classrooms, but doing this over a Zoom, right? Or doing this over a computer and doing technology as we go back this fall. And how are we doing this in a way that really, keeps them engaged, and what strategies can we be using? Another question that we had is, how are we engaging families and parents who we are depending upon as more important than ever at this point, right? Because they are going to be our partners in helping their kids learn. And we are so, trying to figure out what's the best way to reach out to these parents and have a good relationship with them. And then when Tori and I were talking about these two things, he brought up this idea that, like, how are we engaging folks of color after we return after a summer of racial tensions, uprisings, and possible, things are going to be different, right? Things are going to be different with our teachers of color, with our students of color. And how are we going to approach this? What are we going to do to be sensitive to that? And how are we going to do this all in a virtual world when we can't even be face-to-face with each other, right? We can't even see each other. We can't give each other hugs. How are we going to communicate and try to build understanding and have that strong planning and honest dialogue that is going to be needed in order to be able to really, get through a lot of this. And so we're going to touch on some of these conversations today. It's going to be pretty conversational today, when we hope to provide some examples and some ideas for you to just start thinking in the right direction as you get back to school and start your planning. So we're happy to have you all here, and it's so excited. So let's move forward. The first part that we're going to start on is thinking about just students and the ways in which we are using our regular old strategies, but transferring them to an online setting. So I think the thing that we have been emphasizing as we get back to school and planning is starting with something you know well. Unless you are a brand new teacher for the first time and you've never stepped foot in a classroom, you already have strategies. You already have ideas about what works best in your classroom and how it is that you engage your students. I asked Tori, tell me something that you do to make sure that that you build that relationship with your kids.
I like to build a community in my classroom. I like to play a lot of music. I'm really big into music. I'm a musician myself. And so we'll play a lot of music and not really radio stuff, just kind of lesser known things like jazz or old school artists. And it kind of makes us build a relationship from there. So I'll have third grade students coming in asking me to play Frank Sinatra or Sammy Davis song. And it's just kind of things that they typically won't know about, but they know it in my classroom. And we kind of have that, that community. And it makes them more trusting. It makes us build stronger relationships. I also like to use art a lot, and I'll build a little student gallery in the room for whatever they draw, and I'll put it up there, and it makes them feel more appreciative. And I like doing things like that so the kids feel more welcome when they're in the classroom, not like they're just going to school, but they're going to another family for that day. And it just makes them more comfortable, makes them want to learn, makes them more engaged. And that's what I've been doing for the past few years. It's been really successful.
So do we have to throw all that out the window because your class is not going to be in your physical room this year?
No, I know when I built my virtual classroom during the quarantine earlier this year, I still made sure to include a page that had a Spotify playlist of our class's favorite songs. I had videos on there. I would always every single day try to upload a video of me just saying hi to the kids. And still to this day, just a couple of days ago, actually, I got an email from a student, even though they're in 6th grade now, and they're still on the message board in the classroom talking to each other and sending me music to add to the playlist and videos. And it's just, it makes me happy. So I don't think you have to be in person to do that. You can do it virtually and be successful.
There are still ways to build culture. And so, when it comes to building these relationships starting on day one, it is about learning about each other, right? I know Tori's stepping into a brand new classroom this year and doesn't know his kids yet. And so how do you learn about them? How do you share? How do you start building, that classroom cohesion that you need? And I was thinking about, I recently saw these identity charts on Facing History, which I'll share in a second. And I thought, if I were stepping back into my 4th grade classroom, I would love to use these identity charts on the first day. But because I'm not stepping into a real classroom, how would I do this? And so if we were in a regular classroom, I would be getting out the chart paper. Every kid would have their, you know, their name at the center, and all of their identities would be, you know, would be the ones that they write down, including factors that, you know, that labels that society place on them, as well as things that they feel about themselves. And it really helps build, you know, helps build student relationships so they can see each other fully and break down some stereotypes. And it, you know, it helps them think about who it is that they are, right? What are they bringing to this classroom? How are they being part of this culture? So, you know, and you can see I have, oh, I forgot to point out, these are all at the tiny URL that I have, and the slides are also within, within the SCED. I've also put a PDF of all these slides in the SCED, and the hyperlinks to this activity from Facing History are right there. So, it's up there in blue. And so I thought, how would I translate this to a classroom, right? Where I have, you know, students who are coming in, piping in over the Zoom, or, you know, how would I do this as an assignment? And I thought, you know, Mike mentioned this morning Jamboards. And if you haven't played around with Jamboards yet, they're just, I like them because they're really simple, right? It is a sticky note collaborative board. And so my thought was that I would try to do this with, you know, with my students, and I just have them all create their own identity chart using the Jamboards. And so I created, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna pull that tiny URL and I'm gonna put it in the chat unless somebody else is able to put it in the chat. Did anybody catch that tiny URL? Help me out here. Let's see, I wanna say it was, let's see, I'm gonna pull it back. But if you, I'm gonna go back and pull that, and then you guys can go ahead and play with this example. But it is just, it's just a Jamboard, and all I've done is I have created a slide for each of my kids, and I'll show you how to add a sticky note if that's something that you want to play with. In case you haven't seen Jamboards yet, ridiculous. They're free. They're part of the Google Suite, and I just like them because it doesn't take much, you know, setup, and it doesn't take much to do. So in my classroom, I have Harry Potter. You know, I have Hermione, and I have Ron, and so on, right? I've got all these folks and my kids in my classroom, and all you'd have to do to be able to add a sticky note is click on this and type in another, what is it, Hermione? Oh, she's got long hair, right? Right. So Hermione has long hair. What is something that she has as an aspect of herself that she wants to use as her identity, and she can add that onto that Jamboard. Let me go back and pull up. I'm gonna jump out of this. I'm gonna exit out. Oh. Hold on, guys. Oh yeah, good times. Don't you love it when you're tech? See, you all will soon experience all of this greatness of, you know, forgetting. Oh, here's that tiny URL right there. tinyurl.com/changedclass. And I'm gonna put that into the chat. I'm sure one of you has already beat me to it, haven't you? Ha, ha, ha. There you go. So there is the slide deck. If you yourself want to jump into that Jamboard, I've created 3 of them, and they're all the same, but due to this, the Jamboard is limited, just so you know, to 50 people. And so I have distributed, because we have 142 people in here. Maybe not everybody wants to jump into one to play around, but pick one at random, and if it's full, go pick another one, and try it out if you get a chance, if you're playing around in the background. But as you can see, I just set it to open and collaborative, just like a Google Doc or just like Google Slides. And you can see how it is that we played around with this Jamboard. So back to this content here. Tori, did you have any questions? Are you confident about using a Jamboard?
Yes, I am, yeah.
Would this be something that you would try in your classroom? Daughter of dentists. Is she really a daughter of dentists? Hermione, by the way. I don't know this. I'm not up on my Harry Potter lore. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
I would. This year I have kindergarten, so probably not this year, but I would normally. And when I usually teach 5th grade, I would definitely use this.
Yeah. So I made one for you. And I'm not going to make you go into this one, but you could add your own sticky note, and you could see, you know, what you would add about, what would be one thing that you would identify about yourself?
Handsome. I guess we can.
Handsome. I would agree with that. Handsome, right there. There you go. We did not plan that, folks. That was totally spontaneous. All right. So back here, back here on our session, I just wanted to let you know that the engagement strategies, there are so many of them that you probably used in your classroom. If you use things like gallery walks or, you know, any kind of kinesthetic activities, you can translate these into a Zoom environment, right? If you did like a think, pair, share, if you did sticky note brainstorms, if you did discussions and debates with your high schoolers. I did a whole webinar on you know, engagement strategies for the online classroom, and I put those notes in there. So it's more, you know, more than just, you know, Jamboard for an identity piece. There's a lot more in there. But the other thing that we wanted to say was just make sure that you are considering accessibility. So what does that mean to you, Tori?
I remember being a student in school, just assuming that every student, all of my friends, every classmate was going to the same home as me. I understood there were, you know, students who lived in foster care or you know, something like that. I just assumed they were going to a home, to a house, you know, with a family. And it wasn't until I became a teacher and started having my own parent-teacher conferences that I learned that some students, even though they look fine at school, are going home to shelters or living in cars or staying in houses with like 50 other people, and they're all like staying in the living room together. And they don't have consistent access to a computer or to textbooks and pencils and paper. And so it really made it important to me when I made my virtual classroom to make it accessible to everybody. So I made a desktop version, a mobile version. Then I would make printouts that I could also send to families if need be. And going forward this year, with it being virtual for the first few months or however long it may be, that's another thing we're going to have to worry about, especially given the fact that they have lost their jobs earlier this year and
you're sweaty today.
relocate somewhere.
Yeah, you do. You're kind of stinky.
And so it's just
You
something
need some deodorant.
equitable.
I will try to mute our participants.
I can hear you.
I know. Sorry, guys. Hold on. I'm trying to mute her. I don't know. Sorry, Esri. Can you? Is that you?
Yeah, she
No.
muted.
Oh, she muted. Okay, we're all set. Sorry, Tori. Continue on.
But yeah, just making sure accessibility is equitable to everybody. You know, you may not have a student who can get to a computer every day, and I know some districts are talking about wanting to rent out or give out devices to students, which is great. But not every student may have a place to charge that device. So they may use it just that time, or they may not, if they have a place to charge it, they may not have a place with Wi-Fi to get onto their assignments. And so there's so many different factors in there that you have to consider and not just think, okay, as long as I make this website and put my work online, everybody can get online. That's not the case. And it's not like they can go to libraries right now on top of that to get the work done. So you have to really consider all factors really when it comes to accessibility this year.
And certainly make those accommodations for your kids.
Yeah, make those accommodations.
And the best way to understand what those accommodations are and what is needed is perhaps to talk to families and partner with them. And so one of the things that we just wanted to make sure that we touched on was this idea that your families are going to be a huge part of your classroom this year, right? And so when you think about what strategies you use to engage parents, what has been successful in the past, what will be successful this year, given the different environment, and how might you start thinking about really, you know, ramping up your relationship with parents this year. And so, you know, some of the things that we would suggest from common sense is, you know, of course, finding a platform that meets the needs of parents where they are. And what I mean by that is like, you know, are they on phones? Are they on mobile devices? Do they have laptops? Are they able to receive your messages in the language that they speak at home? We do reviews of all different kinds of platforms. So continue. Sorry, allowed? Yes, continue. We do all kinds of reviews of different kinds of tools, and I put a couple of links to different tools in there. But you know, Talking Points is one that has been suggested to me by a lot of Spanish-speaking parents, right? That they enjoy receiving talking points. Or if you're familiar with Remind, of course, that also does translation and that also does text. The other thing that we suggest is sending out, you know, general updates on a consistent and predictable basis. All right, Tori, you said you update, you know, every week. Every day, right? You have a schedule and it's in the same place.
Yes. For the students, it was every day for the students. And for the parents, it was once a week. And I tried to not make it boring. I'm not to sound bad, because I know I'm the teacher and stuff, but I don't like to be bored. And I know there's a lot of stuff that teachers send out that I'm just like, I'm not about to read this junk. So I tried to make it as entertaining as possible and make them want to read it and be a part of it, because these parents are working all day and they're probably looking at paperwork or whatever they're doing all day. The last thing they want to do is read more informative text. That's just a long paragraph of informative text. So it's been successful sending out newsletters. I'll send it through the email. I had it on the classroom website. The parents can get through it through their phone and download it as well if they didn't have an email for me to use. And yeah, and for the kids, I just update them every day.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, and you know, what parents are most hungry for is, of course, their own kids' content. And so if you are able to incorporate, you know, have your students take responsibility and ownership over the kinds of updates that are being sent home to parents, either through, you know, blogs or digital portfolios or the kind of content they're sharing. You know, I shared links here to Seesaw and EduBlogs as just 2 more ideas for, you know, for trying to help students take ownership of that content, because man, and videos, oh my gosh, parents love videos. They love this stuff, right? And of course, I just saw this tweet a couple days ago and I retweeted it, and it's, you know, it's gotten a lot of traction. But how many of you as teachers are doing this, are thinking about doing a parent-teacher-student meeting in that first week, so you can find out more about each kid, about the parents, about the family, and find out what's going to work for you, right? What's going to work at home? How do you contact them, sign them into all the sites, and go over that plan? So I thought this was just genius, and I thought this would be a great way to kind of kick off the year and really start that relationship with, you know, with a strong meeting that you do right at the beginning of the first week. So of course, it is a partnership that we need more than anything this year between your parents. I'm sure you all know this. So just think about the ways in which you're reaching those parents and the tools that you're going to use to keep them in the loop. When it comes to this is the exciting part, right? This is the meat that I think Tori and I were excited to get to. When it comes to students and teachers of color, we realize that we're coming back into a space in which, you know, maybe you've all been huddled down, you know, hunkered down in your homes all summer long, and now you are coming back to a school situation in which you are going to be faced with a lot of racial tension, possibly, you know, situations that you didn't have to deal with last fall or last spring. But, you know, we just wanted to broach the subject and start thinking about ways in which you could think about how these conversations are going to go. And so, you know, the question is, like, what strategies will you use with teachers and students of color, you know, as engagement strategies? And I kind of say this as it's kind of a trick question, right? Like, I don't know, because the more Tori and I started talking about this, the more it's just like, I don't know if, like, what kind of engagement strategies we're going to be talking about here, right? And you'll see in a second what it is we're talking about. So I posed this question to Tori as, you know, as a teacher of color, as one of the only teachers of color, one of the only Black teachers at his school. I could imagine people coming up and saying, "Oh, Tori, I read this book this summer and it's really changed my thinking." Or, "Oh, Tori, I apologize for X, Y, and Z," or "I'm really sorry that this happened," or, right? Like, I could imagine Tori being the subject of a lot of awkward conversations this fall. And I was just like, oh, how are you going to feel about this? And, you know, what kind of position does that put you in?
It's just, I don't know. Like you said, it is awkward. I'm not looking for it, you know. It's not even, it's not even just me. It's not even going to be just Black teachers. The Asian community as well, you know, faced a lot of hatred earlier this year because of the virus, which was very ridiculous. The Latinx community is still facing a lot of hatred. And so it's awkward. I'm not expecting anything. I know when things first kind of kicked off with George Floyd, I did get emails and texts from different teachers just saying how much they apologized and how they didn't know, you know, the kind of world it really was in terms of race. And I just kind of responded with, "Oh, okay, thanks." You know, I didn't think anything of it. I didn't expect them to be the opposite of that. You know, I'm pretty good at reading people, I hope, but I'm not expecting every person who's not of color to come up to me and, like, give me a high five or something like that when I return. It's just be really genuine and let your actions just kind of show what you've learned, you know?
Right. So, we've had a lot of conversations, clearly, like, I don't know if you know, Tori and I are part of an equity in action group here in California. And so, I'm lucky enough to be part of this group. And so we've had a lot of conversations this summer and, talked a lot about some of these awkward conversations that have already happened, that have taken place. And I think the things that we kind of came up with, and just listening to Tori, I just kind of wrote some of these down, is, just as he said, like being genuine and sincere in your words, but more importantly, being genuine and sincere in your actions, in the things that you're doing every single day. And I wrote this down. I don't know if we kind of said, like, I don't know if this is antagonistic, but don't expect a reward because you read a book this summer, right? Like, that doesn't absolve you of any kind of, expectation or responsibility that you have. And recognizing other people as humans, doesn't earn you a cape. I don't know if that is inflammatory in any way, but it's just this idea that, like, just because you read a book, just because you're part of a book study, it doesn't mean, like, okay, that's done. I am now an anti-racist and my classroom is deemed an anti-racist space, right? It is about more than that. And it is about actually taking action and doing what we can doing more than what we can to take action and make things better, right? And to do our part. So I don't know if you have anything else to say about that at this point.
I think we talked about it earlier, you and I, as far as not only just approaching staff and making it awkward. Also, don't spotlight your students and make it awkward for them as well, because I know in the elementary space where I am, that's not going to come up as much in the classroom because they don't really, they're not really that old enough to really have opinions like that and start debates in class with their students. But don't do it in like middle school and high school. Don't point to the Black kid in class and ask them questions and say, hey, I read White Fragility and this is how I'm thinking now. What do you think about that? That's just awkward for everybody, It's just awkward for everybody. And even though your intentions may be well, I'm sure they are, it's an awkward thing to do, and it kind of just singles people out,
Just like I'm doing to you right now, right? Like, this is...
What do you say? You don't know what to say. You don't want to give the wrong answer and come off as rude. You don't want to make your answer make you come out as, I don't know, like you don't care.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like, you don't have to point everything out, Just
so, go ahead.
Just let your actions show what you've learned. It's great that you've learned it, but let your actions show what you've learned.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So understand that there is this possible racial tension at school. Some students have been through trauma, right, since you've last seen them. And then a lot of these kids have been socially isolated for a long time. And sometimes they forget how to interact with each other, right? And so just be prepared for a lot of that. I wanted to provide just a list of resources here when it comes to social and cultural literacy resources. This is a list that I just wanted to share when it comes to, let's see, like, where do you start? Right? Like, what are we talking about when it comes to what kind of action it is that we're expecting? And so this list of social and cultural literacy resources is a list of resources that, yes, of course, AB 331, please. So this is a place for you to get started. Here is, a bunch of resources related to talking about race from the National Museum of African American History, right? Teaching tolerance's social justice standards. How do you have a difficult conversation in your classroom? Identity charts that I just mentioned, with the Where I'm From poetry. Like, this is a really strong curated list about, social and cultural literacy and what it is that we as teachers and educators can do in the classroom. It's not just for high school, but it's, anti-racism resources for all ages. I also put a list in here of, other resources, for your first days of school, how to create an inclusive classroom for your back to school week, from Facing History as well. And I'm sorry, is that Teaching Tolerance? So there are books. If you're diversifying your book library in your classroom, here is books with characters of color, books about racism, social justice, right? And then of course we have our Equity in Action Wakelet on here as well that I wanted to mention. So here is a plethora of resources that you could use to actually take action as a teacher in your classroom. Don't just talk about it. You know, read books. They're excellent, right? These books change your perspective. They help you think. They help you understand things and understand the history, understand, you know, what is needed right now. But of course, you know, taking action and doing this with your teachers is most important. So we're going to try to put this into practice and see what happens. This is the scary part, right? We're going to consider the following scenario where your students join your virtual classroom and one of them is wearing a Black Lives Matter shirt. A parent sends you an email explaining that your classroom environment is no place for a political statement, and they request that you immediately ban such statements in your classroom and the ability for students to wear them. And if you think this is a far-fetched scenario, it's based on what happened with the 6-year-old that got kicked out of a Kansas daycare. Like, you can read the article, it's hyperlinked here, and I took it word for word, exactly what the parent said. So, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna break out. That might scare all of you, but I think the point here is we're not gonna necessarily have answers coming out of this, but I think it's important to start thinking about these scenarios and what happens when teachers, parents, and students are all together and we are going to be confronting issues of race in the classroom. And so I want to make sure, you know, to say, you know, don't forget those principles we talked about earlier, starting with something that you know well and build from there. You are not, you know, without skill in this area. Teachers, don't just address the First Amendment issue, but this is culture and climate of your classroom. How do you establish culture in your regular, you know, classroom that you have face-to-face within your walls? How are you going to establish culture in your virtual setting? And then when it comes to partnerships with your parents, how do you maintain the partnership with the parent and with all parents in a professional way that treats each other with respect, but also maintains your values as a teacher and your values as, you know, possibly an anti-racist working really hard to change your classroom. So this is going to be fun. Right, Tori? I'm going to break you all into small groups, and you're going to go to on slide 23 here. I'm going to share this in the chat, but you have a set of guidelines here within this separate Google slides, and I'm going to share this in the chat. Here is our slides that we're going to be using. We're going to have 4 minutes, maybe 5 minutes. And you're going to be able to have a small group conversation. So let me figure out how to do this. Hold on, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And let's see if I can breakout rooms. Breakout rooms, here we go. 4 to 5 participants per room. And you're going to have a conversation about that, you know, these Google slides and the scenario that we have here. If anybody has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Is that all clear, Tori? Did I share that out correctly?
Yes.
Okay, and we'll be popping around and we'll see what we can do here. All right, so let's create a breakout room, go and discuss this scenario, put your answers and any notes that you want to share in that Google Doc with, and pick a new slide. And I think we're good, right? So, and of course you can come back and put them in the chat here as well. So you'll see that on these, you'll see group 1, the groups are numbered in the breakout rooms, and just pick a slide and move forward and pick whatever group you are part of. All right, here we go. We're going to create breakout rooms. Open all rooms. Broadcast message. Did that work? Did you all go and talk to somebody? Awesome. Thank you, Craig, for your thumbs up. I really appreciate it. I just wanted to make sure that everybody got a chance to just kind of, I don't know, part of these conferences is to connect with somebody else, right? And to have a conversation. If we were all together in real life, it would be so much fun to be able to turn and talk to a neighbor and have, you know, a quick conversation. And with 149 people that were in this room, right? It's really hard to turn to your neighbor and have a quick conversation, but we tried the breakout room today to see what would happen and have a quick scenario. Thank you all for participating in that. I'm going to ask if there's anybody that would be willing, anyone know how I could do a breakout room in Google Meet? I heard that Google Meets is going to be bringing in a feature of breakout rooms. I don't know when, but that's a rumor that somebody started yesterday that I read on Twitter. So I hope it's true because it sounds really cool. Yeah, some folks had some technical difficulties with their audio or with their video, but we're just trying today, right? No, nobody's grading you. It's just for fun. So here are some of the ideas that I wanted to share that I saw on the breakout group screen here. I noticed that some folks had I don't know if anybody from group 1 wants to share, but group 1, holy cow. You got some great stuff here. I don't know, I should have told you to put your names on here, but if anybody from group 1 wants to share some of their ideas that they had on here, I would love it if you just do a quick share out.
Hi, yeah, we talked about how like starting with what you know, and jumping off of the idea from the don't forget slide about the First Amendment that, like, you know, kids have freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and that Black Lives Matter is not offensive or inappropriate, and it's not really a political issue, it's more of a human rights, moral, ethical issue. And then talked about just like educating students and families to be understanding, but being open to like listen to them and kind of not validate their opinion, because you don't want to validate like something that's racist, but like being willing to listen to them and be understanding and meeting them where they are. And then for your students, doing lessons on resiliency, identity, empathy, and tolerance, things like that.
Absolutely. Thank you. What was your name?
Chelsea.
Chelsea, where do you teach?
I teach at Heritage High School in Paris.
I would gladly send my kids to your classroom. That sounds like a great way to approach it.
Thank you.
And I'm sure your group was fabulous. I also see some notes here about group 4, right? And group 4, I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you about how you would approach this parents. anonymous turtle and anonymous otter. Maybe group 4 would not want to speak. That's okay. They've already spoken because they put their information on this slide here. I'm asking the parent about why she feels, they're assuming it's a she, other than it being other than it just being a political issue. So really engaging the parent about, why they feel this way or why they feel that this is inappropriate would be the way that group 4 talks a little bit about it, right? Group 6 notes, if anybody from group 6 wants to jump in, please feel free. That Ed Code allows political students. And so if you look at Tinker versus Des Moines, of course, that is a First Amendment right of students. Their First Amendment rights do not end at the gate, which we talked about in one of the groups that I jumped into. And could this be used as a starting point for a student discussion? Man, that would be a great, like these issues are going to be in your face this year. And, how could you have a discussion, maybe use some of those tools related to facilitating hard conversations as a way to get started. There are lots of other folks here. I'm just going right down the line here, but there are lots of other notes and ideas in here about, is Black Lives Matter political or is it humanitarian? Right. If anybody wants to share anything in the chat about what it was that that their group talked about, and if anybody, the idea is not to come to a conclusion today. The idea is to get thinking about this because it is very likely that you're going to have some racial tension and issues happen in your classroom this year. So I just wanted to get you thinking about it proactively and setting the stage and using some of these resources to address these issues right at the beginning of the year. And so when these things, hopefully, you're able to have open dialogue and people are able to be respectful and understand what are the values of your classroom and the community that you are part of. Right. So, so that was kind of like the ending activity that we had here. Tori, did you have anything else that you wanted to share when it came to our resources here that we have? How's your group?
Not really. I mean, they're all great. I probably would share the exact same things. I can't think of anything else to add to it. So, by
all means, did you have a good group? I saw Leticia was in your group.
Yeah, we had a really good group. I think we were group 4 actually, but I forgot. But,
okay. Well, I hope everybody had a good conversation. I hope everybody met somebody new today. I hope you're all thinking about ways in which your school is able to engage students, engage parents, and then also think about these issues as you head back into planning. What are some resources and ideas that you need? If you have any feedback for us, please feel free to share it. I've got a survey here and it's also on the sched. Follow me and Tori at, on our Twitter handles if you are so inclined. And of course, thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it. We're so glad that you're interested in this conversation. Did you have something else?
Yeah, I was just gonna say thank you as well. Yeah, follow us. And yeah.
I hope it was fun. I hope it was not scary. I hope, Tori, you had a good time.
I did. And if you follow me, feel free to, message me any other questions you may have that you may have felt kind of nervous to ask on here. So it's a little bit more private. That's fine with me, and I can answer them for you.
By the way, I'm also trying to get Tori to do a podcast. And so everybody needs to encourage Tori to, I'm thinking like Dear Abby type things. Like we're talking about maybe getting our team together and answering questions about race that come up in education and how would we think about handling this situation, and doing a podcast about situational education, sticky points that are coming up. And I think that would be a winner. So if you want to encourage Tori on Twitter to start a podcast, I think that would be great. Thank you all for joining us today. Have a good time at IE Google Camp. We are out. We'll see you all later. Thank you.
Yeah.